here from Thor Teeth. Thought I'd do something a bit different today. And I thought, seeing as some of you might be aware, I tend to do most of the recording and the mixing for Saw Teeth. So seeing as I've got all that on my Mac, I thought I'd take an opportunity to sit down and make this mix walkthrough video just to give you a different view of the song. So I thought I'd probably solo out a few of the instruments so you can kind of hear what the instruments sound like on their own and talk you through a little bit of the process, basically. So without further ado, let's have a quick listen to Smile.
Everybody's got some pain for me. Everybody wants a piece of me. Everybody's got some place to be. Everybody's got a place to be. What since you lied to me? Fuck you, you lied to me. What since you lied to me? Fuck you, you lied to me. You're just a victim in a big sad pile. You're just a victim and it's making me smile. You're just a victim and it's big sad pile. You're just a victim and it's making me smile. Just a victim and it's big sad pile. You're just a victim and it's making me smile. You're just a victim and it's big sad pile. You're just a victim and it's making me smile. What's it?
Okay, so that's our single Smile. So let's start soloing the instruments then, shall we? So let's sort of break this mix down. So let's go all the way back to the top of the page here. So what I tend to like to do is try and keep everything a little bit organized, a little bit color coded. For when I'm mixing quickly, I don't need to think too much then. So I know like dark blue is drums. So all the drums will be here. So you've got like kick drums, snare, top, bottom, toms, overhead cymbals, etc. Then I move down to brown is bass guitar, so that'll be all the bass guitar tones. Then light blue is guitars, so we've got the guitars here, see these ones here. Then moving down, yellow is all vocals, so these two at the top here will be my lead vocals. And then moving down, we got some harmonies here, and then we got Chris and James doing their vocals here, doing a few harmonies, and then orange tends to be gangs. Obviously in hardcore or in Saw Teeth we always have lots of gangs, so we got lots of gangs here, which I'll go into a bit more detail in a minute. So going right back up to the top here, let's solo the drums and see what the drums sound like. So we'll take it from, let's zoom in a bit first and say like each of these will be an individual mic recording each piece of the drum kit. So this will be the kick and snares, etc. And so down we've got some rack toms here, some floor toms down here, and the cymbals. So let's have a quick listen to the drums. Something that you've noticed that what I really try to aim for here in the Saw Teeth sound, I always try and make the snare almost sound like one of those 80s thrash snares. So you've got that real sort of like psh, that real whiplashy sound. James has got quite a deep snare as well anyway, but I really try and go for that whiplash sound just so that snare really cuts through the mix. So let's just go listen to the drums within the mix now so you can see what I mean with the snare really cracking through. So as you can see, it's got that real sort of whiplash. Now, part of the reason I can get away with that is when I record drums, I tend to bust everything out to this one here. So let me just solo those drums again, and I'm just going to mute this thing here that says crush. Now, this is the drum bus, so all the drums go into here, and this is what the drums sound like once I've done all my individual EQ and compression and things like that. don't know about you, but I feel that's not really, the snare's not harsh enough, the kick isn't kicking enough. So I want to give it a bit more. So basically what I do is I then buff everything also going to this channel here. So if I unmute this, now check this out. What I'm going to do, I'm going to mute it and then put it back in. So we're going to start with it muted here. So muted. So look at this and then listen. So it makes a massive difference. And all I'm really, to be fair, all that really is pretty much pure distortion. I'm just using one of these channels here. And all this is just adding distortion. So I'm literally just adding distortion to the drums and then playing that parallel with the rest of the drums. And so you've got two mixes of drums. One's which is heavily distorted, which is this one down here. And then one that isn't. And it just gives you a much fatter sound. So other things to notice on this bit with the drums was, as you probably can see, I haven't actually got a room track. I have got this room buff here. So what I did was, if I move over to this screen, might be a bit easier to see. No, maybe not. So what I've done is all the drum mics are all going through to this buff here, which again, I'm just running in parallel. So let's just solo this. And what I'm going to do is just, right, okay, right. So what I'm going to do is I made a fake room sound. And what I done was buffed all the individual drums to this buff again. And it gave you this sound. So it's very quiet, but what it's predominantly doing is giving me a kind of a room sound. I'm just going to bring up the volume on that just for a minute. So it basically is giving us a kind of sound of drums in a room. And I kind of balance the faders out going in to give you that rough kind of drum sound. Then adding that back into the mix, let me just solo the drums again. And I'm just going to take that one out. So I'm just going to mute that one just for a minute. Now, listen to it when I unmute it and then put it back on solo. So it just gives us a little bit more to the drums. So next of the instruments is, let's move down rather than get too carried away with drums. So next we move on to the bass tone. So this is Chris playing the bass. So let me just solo the bass out for you. So this was the bass tone we ended up in the end. So basically just your Sam's, your typical modern day Sam's amp sound, giving you a kind of, giving you a very kind of like, how do I describe it, that sort of SVT sound. What I'm trying to do there is really make the most of the scratchiness of the plectrum and cut them through. So basically split that into 3 tracks. They are actually all the same tracks, but what I actually done was, let me just unsolo that. And what I individually, so I basically split it into 3 ranges. So we've got like the mid-range channel, which is this one here. So this is the overall bass tone. And what we've basically got there is I've cut out the low end. So look at this EQ up here. So I'm doing everything from here onwards, and everything below 90 is the low end that I don't really need on this bit, because the low end always seems quite hard to mix. And what I've done is on the next track, let me close this. This is the low end track, and it's got everything here. That way then I've got the low end and the mid-range on separate faders. So if I feel there's too much low end, I can then bring it down, or if I feel there's not enough low end from the bass guitar, I can move it up. So here's the low end. You might have to listen with good speakers because this is really just all the sub sounds. So those sort of sounds are the sounds when you're listening to music you kind of feel in the gut. They're quite hard to hear, but they're all the subs, and that kind of, it's really important to control the subs in the mix and get it sounding good. Then, just to help that cut through, is I've got this little channel here, and this is basically just distorted the bass. So this is the same bass tone, but all I've done is now just add a lot more distortion and filtered it out, so we are really just focusing on the real mids of the sound. This will be all the scratch from the plectrum hitting the bass strings, and this is how it sounds with, like, I've overemphasized the distortion on the sound amp pedal on this as well, so this is how it's sounding. So it's really nasty, gritty, filtered out sound, but you'd be shocked how much that adds back into the song. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mute the distortion channel of the bass. I'm going to play the mix, and then I'm going to bring it in and bring it out so you can really get a feel. Watch how when I unmute it here. So watch it when I unmute it and how the bass suddenly comes alive in the mix. Okay, here we go. This is it with it muted. Now I'm going to drop it in.
Everybody's got to pay for me. Everybody wants a piece of me. Everybody's got some place to be. Everybody's got a place to be.
So basically what you notice is the bass kind of just disappears. You can feel it, but you're not hearing any of the character from the bass, and that's actually that distorted channel. Okay, so let's have a listen, see what we've got so far. So we've got the bass guitar, we've got the drums. So far this is how it's sounding. And then it's time to add the guitars. Notice how the guitars now add a lot, just fill out the sound. I can't think of the guitars to glue everything together, so let's have a listen with the guitars in. No, in fact, I'm going to play it along, then drop the guitars in. Okay, so notice how the guitars come in. It now starts sounding like a song. So let me just solo those guitars a bit more now. So this is the guitar tone. So I've just thrown up the EQ here. Now you find with guitars, there does tend to be quite a bit of low end. And I've actually filtered these ones quite heavily, so there could be a number of reasons. I could have had the mic a little bit too close to the speaker. It could be a number of reasons. So when you got it really close, you do get a lot of low end starts coming through. So basically, let's have a listen with the EQ on and off. Okay, just solo in the guitars. So did you notice when everyone look at this bypass button, when the bypass button's engaged, the guitar suddenly get quite muddy, quite horrible? Have another listen. I'll have it with it engaged, and then I'm going to press it to put the EQ back in. So massive difference how much brighter the guitars are. So there's a couple of things here. So probably one of the big things with this EQ was the low end. So I've actually filtered it up to 152. Normally I might filter something, anything from about 90 up to 200 depending on the genre. I actually felt with this speaker it seemed to needed to be filtered quite high. Really allowed the bass to cut through the mix better, and basically what I'm doing is allowing the bass guitar to act as the low end of the guitars, and then the guitar to be all the sheen and the bite. So listen to it now when I take just this low end filter off. So I've just got it off. Can you hear that? So listen to how clear it is. Then we're back on. You can really hear that low subby, like massive thing with that speaker. That's probably one of the biggest things there. And then the other things to look out for is just going along the guitar here. There's obviously a bit of mud around about 400, and let me just mute that in and out here. Just a bit of an unpleasant sound to the room, I think, basically, but just I felt that needed to drop out a little bit, and there's probably a bit of fizz around about 3,000. So let's have a listen to this one. So are you hearing what I'm hearing? So listen to this playing along. I'm going to unengage it. So we're looking at this one here, and notice that sort of like shh coming that can be quite aggressive to the ear. And then other than that, I done a really tiny boost around about 5k. That's this one here. So let me turn that on and off so you can have a little listen. So basically what that's adding back is some more fizz, because we cut the fizz out at where this number 5 is here. So we cut a lot of the fizz and harshness out around about 3k. But all I'm doing is adding a slightly more pleasant fizz in round about 5k. So, and you know, and as I boost, it's not a sharp cut. It's a bit more of a broader cue. So basically, it's just, I feel it's put the presence back in the guitar. So when you listen to it without, and then listen to it, when you listen to it without and then listen to it on, it just basically adds that presence back in there. Now the way you're going to really notice these things is in the mix. So now I'm just going to play with a couple of these things. Watch it when I take out the low end here. Watch it when I take out this unpleasant room sound. But the real key ones here really to take away would be this one and this one and this. Just make a big difference. Obviously here we've rolled off just over 10k. You never really need much more over 9k really in guitars to be fair. So so it just takes off any unpleasant sort of sheen that we don't need, leaving space then for the guitar, for the vocals and the cymbals. So anyway, look out for when I mute these individual bands and how much it affects the mix and the guitars. Okay?
It's just a victim and a big sad pop. It's just a victim and it's making me smile. It's just a victim and it's big sad pop. It's just a victim and it's making me smile. Just a victim and it's big sad pop. It's just a victim and it's making me smile. It's just a victim and it's big sad pop. It's just a victim and it's making me smile. What's it you like to me? Fuck you, you like to me. What's
things I noticed, some of the biggest ones I felt that really stood out to me was the low end. By not having that filtered out, that's just number one here. The guitars just were over too much low end. It was just sucking into the mix, and the bass was kind of just all over the place. The other one that I really felt made a really big difference was this number 5, which is the round about 3K. There was a really nasty hiss. Have a listen to this one again in the mix and notice when I take this out, okay?
Just a victim in a big sad pile. It's just a victim and it's making me smile. It's just a victim in a big sad pile. It's just a victim and it's making me smile. Just a victim in a big sad pile. It's just a victim and it's making me smile.
So massive. So anyway, without further ado, let's move on. So we've got the guitars, we've got the bass. Now let's talk about my vocals. So let's have a quick listen with the vocals. There we go.
Everybody's got to pay for me. Everybody wants a piece of me. Everybody's got some place to be. Everybody's got a reason to be. What's it you like to me?
So to be fair, this is one of my favourite ones I tracked for the album. Actually, I was really quite happy with my voice in it, but I still didn't feel I had enough nastiness and grit. So what I've done is added a bit of distortion to the vocals. I saw a producer I looked up to do this. I noticed Kirk Ballou done this, and obviously he's guitarist from Converge, so big shout out to him. But I was watching him do something on Nail the Mix and thought I would give it a go. And I feel it really makes a big impact. Listen to the vocal solely. I'm going to have it on bypass, and then I'm going to bring that back in.
Everybody's got to be for me. Everybody wants a piece of me. Everybody's got some place to be. Everybody's got a reason to be.
So massive, really, really massive difference. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take all the processing off one. If you look at the way I've recorded this, just for breathing purposes, I've recorded each line on separate lines.
Everybody's got to be for me. Everybody wants a piece of me.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mute everything from this channel. So all you've got is just the plain audio, and then this one we'll leave with everything on, just so you can have an idea. So you see what the raw vocal is sounding like.
Everybody's got to be for me. Everybody wants a piece of me. Everybody's got some place to be.
So notice how much dollar it is and how much it's kind of lacking character. Obviously what I've done, I've pushed a lot, really made the vocal really gritty, added some distortion. One of the biggest things I do to vocals is, I'm just going to loop this section here. One of the biggest things I like to do to vocals is compress the hell out of them. So when I compress them, I really just crush it. So just have a listen to this bypassed.
Everybody's got to be for me.
Now with it unbypassed.
Everybody's got to be for me. Everybody's got to be for me. Everybody's got to be for me.
So the thing you're listening for in that is all the explosives like the all that, and it kind of brings those up, and it brings out all the grit and the cough and the spit, and it just makes a vocal just sound that little bit more disgusting, which I think sounds super cool in this genre of music and heavier bands of music. So have a quick listen with it on and off again.
Everybody's got to be for me. Everybody's got to be for me. Everybody's got to be for me. Everybody's got to be for me.
Massive difference, massive difference. So let's have like now let's have a quick look and see what other backing vocals we've got. So we've got quite a bit on this. So moving over to here, we've got these harmonies down here. So let's have a quick listen to these.
You just think the man is big sad pound. You just think the man is making me smile. You just think the man.
So really subtle harmonies. Me singing like an angel, I think. So let's add it with the lead vocals, and I'll mute the harmonies on and off, and you can see what it does.
smile. You're just a victim and it's big sad pow. You're just a victim and it's making me smile. You're just a victim and it's big sad pow. You're just a victim and it's making.
So very subtle. So let's hear the harmonies coming in and out. You've got to listen hard for these. It just adds a little bit more character to everything and just builds the chorus up just that little bit more. So with it in now.
Pow! Just a victim and it's big sad pow. You're just a victim and it's making me smile. You're just a victim and it's big sad pow. You're just a victim and it's making me smile.
So very subtle. So let's one more time with it on.
Just a victim and it's big sad pow. You're just a victim and it's making me smile.
Adds a bit more of a stereo effect to the lead vocal. So let's now see what we got next. Right, well we've got Chris's vocals and James's vocals. So let's zoom in on these. So these are Chris and James doing vocals. So obviously they sing in a slightly different tone. So all this stuff does is add into the song to add more character. So let me just mute them in a minute in the mix, and then I'm going to drop it in.
What's this you like to me? Fuck you like to me? What's this you like to me? Fuck you like to me?
So just adds that little extra sort of shoutiness, more people involved in the mix. Just adds it. Just all these sort of things are used to sweeten up the song and just make it bigger and bigger as it plods along, rather than keeping the song quite static. So let's individually hear what they sound like. So Chris and James together now.
What's this you like to me? Fuck you lied to me. What's this you lied to me? Fuck you lied to me.
Actually works quite well. So if I individually solo both of them, it should be quite an interesting sound. So Chris is a lot more higher. So here's Chris.
What's this you lied to me? Fuck you lied to me.
And then you've got James, which is he's taking care of the low end in the gang vocal here. Well, in the shouts here.
What's this you lied to me? Fuck you lied to me.
And then obviously all I've done is added a little bit of delay, just to give the impression, if I was like, let's just solo their vocals again, and I will mute the delay. So let me just take all these delays out. This is what they would sound like without any effect on it.
What's this you lied to me? Fuck you lied to me.
Obviously what I've wanted to do, because they would have recorded that in the vocal booth, so it was quite a dead sound. So obviously what I want to do is make that sound a little bit larger. So I added some delay in there just to really give a bit of a stereo effect, just make it sound bigger, just give a little bit of a sweetening to the whole thing as well. So here it is with the delay back on.
What's this you lied to me? Fuck you lied to me.
So notice now you got that slap hitting the wall, so it sounds like they're back in the room again. So right, so let's have a listen to all the vocals in the mix now, the backing vocals, lead vocals and harmonies.
What's this you lied to me? Fuck you lied to me. What's this you lied to me?
Or let's, even better, let's solo out all the vocals. So this is all the vocals soloed on their own.
What's this you lied to me? Fuck you lied to me. What's this you lied to me? Fuck you lied to me. You're just a victim.
And then we'll go over to the harmonies.
Man, it's making me smile. You're just a victim, man, it's big sad pow. You're just a victim, man, it's making me smile.
So the way to think of this is with the backing vocals is I've generally found with Sore Teeth, I've tried lots of different things over the years and experimented, but I think sometimes it's keeping things simple. One of the things which I liked about this song was the simplicity of it, the actual structure of it with the backing vocals. We've not really done too much. We've not tried to go for lots of doubling on the vocals. What we tried to do is flatten it with alternative vocals, but at the same time, not really doing too much. This is about this bit here, these harmonies here is probably the only harmonies we've got. Obviously, Chris and James doing their backing vocals, which is just basically just backing me up, just to reinforce it with their own tones, and it just keeps it really simple. The next thing on the last, but the last thing we actually got into the song is the actual Gangs. Really proud of the sound I've got for the Gangs for this album. Lots of experiments and stuff, and this basically was the Gangs here was basically recorded with pencil mic condenser microphones that you would see that would normally go over a drum kit. I recorded it stereo, like the way you would set up to record choirs. I then just got, like, there were 4 of us in the end, so it was like me, Chris and James, and then our very good friend of ours, Matty, who's the lead singer from Aftermath of an Empire. He came down to help us on the night. If you look on our Instagram page and Facebook page, I think I've done a few posts of us recording it. It was a lot of fun, and basically all we done was recorded lots and lots of takes, and we just kept moving around for each take to give the impression there were 50 people or a whole football stadium chanting along to our song. So let's have a listen to the Gangs in the mix.
Just the victim man is making me smile. Just the victim man is big sad pow. You're just the victim man is making me smile. You're just the victim man is big sad pow. You're just the victim man is making me smile.
So quite a large sound, as you can agree with the Gangs. Again, I think we recorded it 10 times, but obviously each time we were recording it stereo with 2 microphones. So let's have a listen to the Gangs soloed out. This is obviously with all the processing on as well.
Making me smile.
So quite a big sound. Let's hear it again.
Making me smile.
So interesting thing about this is what do the Gangs sound like on their own? So each individual track, this is the first track,
Making me smile.
just kind of pretty run of the normal on its own.
Making me smile.
What I'm going to do is slowly go down here and add the other 9.
Making me smile.
Starts getting bigger.
Making me smile.
Starts getting bigger.
Making me smile.
So that's now four of the stereo channels of Gang vocals. You know, it sounded pretty good, but we just kept going with it. So let's start adding the other ones in.
Making me smile. Making me smile. Making me smile.
Notice now it's starting to sound like quite a few men in a room shouting.
Making me smile.
That one's made quite a big difference. That's really fattening it up.
Making me smile.
Last but not least,
Making me smile.
I just created this really huge sound. So, and then what I done was basically buffed all those channels out into my Gang buff with all this processing on. So let's just mute all the processing, and you can hear what it sounds like raw. And let's take that reverb off as well. So this is the raw Gangs all together. Okay, so this is 10 stereo channels of us shouting, making me smile.
Making me smile.
You know, most people think, oh, that sounds cool. Let's have a listen again.
Making me smile.
I mean, that sounds cool, but it just sounds a little dead. We did record it in the room we were rehearsing, so it's a massive room, so there was quite a good reverb sound in it anyway. But I just felt I needed to add a few things. So, first of all, a little bit of EQ. And let's have a quick listen. With it engaged, obviously.
Making me smile.
Not too much. All I'm dropping out this one here, just allowing like the lead vocal to cut through there. So just taking out, where is that there? So round about 2K, where the lead vocal tends to be quite dominant cutting through. All I've done is just dip that a little bit here, just to allow the lead vocal to drop through. Incidentally, I think if I look back, where is it? No, that's fine. So yeah, so just allowing the lead vocal thing. Then I've got this compressor, so I'm going to allow you to listen to it with it off. Then I'm going to put the compressor on. This really makes a big difference.
Make it really small!
Now with it on.
Make it really small!
Notice how much bigger now that's got, and I'm clipping it a little bit. It's adding a little bit of distortion, but for these sort of hardcore thrash gangs, it sounds great. Have a listen again.
Make it really small!
Two with it off.
Make it really small!
It's just night and day to me. I just love it. So one more time.
Make it really small!
Then last but not least, I'm using a stereo image here, and I've just got it set up just to make it just a little bit wider. So have a listen with this on. This is subtle. You want to be listening to this on good speakers, or if you've got headphones, you will really notice it if they're good headphones.
Make it really small!
Then with it off.
Make it really small!
Then with it on again.
Make it really small!
Night and day. So last but not least, a little bit of reverb. That goes to a reverb I've set up in my mix template called Gangverb, and it sounds like this.
Make it really small!
Just sweetens it just a little bit without.
Make it really small!
It's all right like that, but just a really subtle bit just sweetens it.
Make it really small!
And that is pretty much the whole mix. So let me get everything back to normal. Make sure I've got everything set up, and I'll let you guys have a good listen. I mean, some little mixing tricks here is with the automation. I've got this thing over here. It's called Breakdown, and basically what that consists of is the rhythm guitars, the kick drum, and the bass guitar. And what I've done, we'll see it on the bass guitar, and let me just bring these two kick channels down to meet the bass guitar and the guitar. So let's just put it just under here. So obviously this is the bass guitar's volume, these are the kick drums, so let me just put it back onto volume. And then the guitar, let's put the guitar so you can visually see this. So, and if I zoom in, I believe, have we done that, or was did I do that or not? Here we go. So here's a classic example. So if you look, the kick drum, I've just nudged that up a tiny amount, and same with the bass and same with the guitar. So let's really zoom in here. So they're all at the same time. And what we're kind of doing, so that waveform's a kick drum. And this is obviously the bass volume, because it's routed to the bass bus. And these are guitar waveforms. And what I'm basically very subtly doing, when it goes into the beginning of that riff, you really feel it punch. It's just really subtle, but I group those channels together just for this, and it gives you a really subtle sound. So just check it out. Just allows it to really pop in there. That's a boom. Now, let's just quickly do this, and I'll just delete this here. Now listen to it. Just a little bit flat, really. So let me just put that back in. And of course, all these things are all done to just allow the song to move, you know, so it doesn't just stay static. It just keeps it exciting. Obviously, there's quite a lot of movement happening on the snare. You can see with the even the reverb on the snare plate, I'm bringing it up for certain bits. These are like coming up in volume, going back down and stuff. All these kind of things, you know, playing around with the drum rolls just to keep everything. Well, when I say playing around, let me just zoom in on the snare here. So if you listen to the snare, it doesn't just stay flat, it's constantly moving. So it just gives you that so you get that full realistic thing. Sometimes when you compress in and you're putting all the power on the snare, it suddenly gets too much. So this is what we're doing, and it's just little tricks throughout the mix, where we just kind of like on the guitars, just bringing them up for certain bits. Same with the vocals, cutting out little bits here. Obviously, cut it out here just to. Let's have a listen. Why I've done that. I think it's to allow the gangs to really bounce through. Yeah, so it just cuts out. Imagine if we didn't have that there. To back how it was. Just allows that gang to be the main thing there, because I think quite like that, and I imagine I've probably boosted the gang channel's volume for that bit. So yeah, so in all, that's the mix. I'm just going to play this now, and you can have a decent listen to the song and enjoy. By all means, head over to Spotify or any other digital outlet and download our music. I believe the album comes out on the 5th of April, and you'll be able to hear it there. So enjoy.
Everybody's got to pay for me. Everybody wants a piece of me. Everybody's got some place to be. Everybody's got a place to be. What's it you like to me? Fuck you, you like to me. What's it you like to me? Fuck you, you like to me. You're just a victim in a big sad pile. You're just a victim and it's making me smile. You're just a victim and it's big sad pile. You're just a victim and it's making me smile. Just a victim and it's big sad pile. You're just a victim and it's making me smile. You're just a victim and it's big sad pile. You're just a victim and it's making me smile. What's it you like to me? Fuck you, you like to me. What's it you like to me? Fuck you, you like to me. Everybody's got to pay for me. Everybody wants a piece of me. Everybody's got some place to be. Everybody's got a reason to be. What's it you like to me? Fuck you, you like to me. What's it you like to me? Fuck you, you like to me. You're just a victim in a big sad pile. You're just a victim and it's making me smile. You're just a victim in a big sad pile. You're just a victim